Sorry. I'll do it again. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Perth East Council. I'd like to call our meeting to order. If everyone could please bow their head for a moment of reflection. Thank you. Before we start with our general part of the meeting, I want to welcome Shay with us tonight. She is our new fire prevention officer. Shay is joining us from Tay-Play Fire Protection Inc., where she gained experience conducting inspections, performing repairs on fire protection equipment. She is on top of her class. She was awarded the highest grade to date from the Fire Inspection and Fire Safety Education Advanced Fanshawe College program. So welcome, Shay, to Perth East, and we're very glad to have you. So do you want to say anything? Great, thank you. Okay, we'll get back to our agenda. So we need a motion to confirm the agenda. I believe Andrew has something to say before that.
Yeah, if council is pleased with this idea, I'd like to move the organizational review portion listed on the agenda from closed session to another meeting.
You're making that a motion? Do we have a seconder? Jeremy? Comments or questions? Are you talking about the whole closed session? Or what are you talking about?
Just the first bullet point, which is labeled organizational review.
Okay, you don't want to have any discussion at all then. Is that it? Okay. All those in favor of that motion? Carried. Okay, then the motion will read. Yeah, I carried it. That was just to move. That wasn't the whole agenda, was it? Whole agenda? Okay. Okay, good. All right, we're good. If you have pecuniary interest, you can disclose that now or as the meeting goes along. We have 12 items under our consent agenda. Is there any item anyone would like pulled or have questions? Hugh?
I just didn't know if it would be council would like to support 5.110 about the cemeteries and things like that.
Okay.
This township is looking for support. I believe that they would look for some provincial money to help them look after cemeteries and stuff like that.
Okay, so we'll pull that one out. Any other one anyone wants pulled? No? Okay, then we have a motion that we will, that items 5.1.1 to 5.1.12 as set out in the consent agenda for December 19, 2023 regular meeting of council be received for information with the exception of item 5.1.10, which will be introduced separately. The minutes of the Perth East Public Library meeting, December 12, 2023, be received for information, and the minutes of December 5, 2023, regular meeting of council be adopted. Move from the seconder, moved by Jerry, second by Amanda. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, now going back to yours, Hugh. Do you want to speak again?
I'd make a motion that we support that township and that we only send a letter of support to that township and to a letter to Matthew Ray. I don't think it needs to go any further than that.
Okay, and do we have a seconder, Jeremy? We do have a resolution for that already, so we will, it's fairly lengthy. Okay, that Council of the Township of Perth East received the Clearview Township Resolution of Support, Cemetery Transfer, Abandonment, Administration, and Management Support for Information. Council directs staff to prepare a letter of support. Whereas the Funeral, Burial, Cremation Services Act 2002, when a cemetery is declared abandoned by a judge of the Superior Court Justice, the local municipality within those geographic boundaries the land of the cemetery is located becomes the owner of the cemetery with all the rights and obligations in respect of the cemetery, the assets, trust funds, trust accounts related to its it that the previous owner or operator possessed. Whereas the last decade, there's been an increase in the number of churches, local cemetery boards initiating processes to transfer ownership or abandon their owned and operated cemeteries to the local municipality due to such issues as high maintenance costs, inaccuracy of records, lack of financial and human resources to effectively operate and maintain the cemetery, increase regulatory processes regarding training, selling of interment rights, financial operation of the care and maintenance fund, etc. Whereas municipalities experience the same issues, pressures that churches, local boards experience with the operation and maintenance of cemeteries within its jurisdiction, and additional transfers of cemetery lands only compound the burden on municipal taxpayers. And whereas cemeteries are important infrastructure where the reasonable cost for interment rights, burials, monument foundations, cornerstones, and administration charges do not sufficiently support the general operation of cemeteries, and whereas the interest earned from the care and maintenance fund of a cemetery do not provide adequate funding to maintain the cemetery with the rising costs of lawn and turf maintenance contracts and monument restoration. Now therefore it be resolved, Council Township of Perth East requests that the province, through the Ministry of Public Business Service Delivery and the Bereavement Authority of Ontario, consider the following to assist municipalities in the growing concern of cemetery transfers. 1, amend the Funeral, Burial, Cremation Services Act 2002 to have the province, through the BAO, identified as a default owner and operator of a cemetery when it is abandoned. 2, provide annual funding based on the number of cemeteries a municipality owns and operates to municipalities to assist with the maintenance of inactivity and active cemeteries. 3, provide training opportunities for municipalities regarding cemetery administration. 4, investigate and support the design of universal cemetery software for use by municipal cemetery operators that can be offered at an affordable cost. And this resolution be circulated to the MPP Matthew Ray and Clearview Township. How's that? Any questions, comments? Amanda? Oh, Jeremy?
Yeah, I just had a question about the FBCSA. So the province is the one that should be making sure that there's adequate funding in the perpetual care funds for cemeteries, or who's responsible for that side of things? Is it the church that is, who's then reporting to the province, or how does that work? Do we know? Is that part of the training we're looking for?
So right now, yeah, churches and the municipalities, every year we have to file a report with the FBCSA, so with the province, and provide some of the fees that we collect. So a provincial fee, a burial fee, $30 per burial, we provide to the province. That's how that part works. So churches and cemeteries do the same thing, individual ones.
Reporting that to the province or to us to make sure?
To the province. Yeah.
Okay, anyone else? Bob?
So on the sale of a plot, it used to be 40% went to perpetual care, or whatever you want to call it today. And that can't be touched by whoever operates a cemetery. It's just in perpetuity to sit there unused. Is that correct?
Yes, the short answer is yes.
It would seem more proactive to ask the province to amend the rules to allow cemeteries that are able to govern themselves to use the funds they collect, rather than having it sit there and, well, what's interest going to do? But yeah, it is true. There's lots of cemeteries that are unable to function, probably because no one wants to be a board of director and deal with all the rigmarole, but.
Okay, Jeremy?
Then those funds ultimately come back to us when it's closed, right? And it ends up us on the hook to care for them along with the perpetual care fund, if I understand that correctly, right? So whether they're using it or we're using it, asking the province to make some changes, I'm in favor of it.
Okay, all in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay, now we're moving to delegations. We have 2 delegations tonight. First delegator is Bill Miller. He's the treasurer of the Milverton and District Rod and Gun club, and Bill, if you'd like to, yes, you can bring, as long as one of you speak, yes. Okay, and if you notice, there is a timer on the screen.
Start the timer after I pass this document. Is that okay?
Sure, yes.
And may I approach the some documents up to the council members, if that's okay? Just as quickly as I can, so that way we don't eat up time.
Thank you.
Sorry, Matthew Livingstone, Milverton. Here on behalf of Milverton Rod and Gun Club. As you recall, we were here recently, a few months back, as Mr. Bateman has brought forth some proposed changes to parcel of land that's adjacent to ours on line 61 in Mornington Ward. At that time, we raised concerns about the noise. We raised concerns about the environmental impacts. We had questions about the studies that were requested at the time when the land was being proposed for development. At that time, we learned that there was only a short list of requirements for Mr. Bateman at the time that he applied to look into the development of the land. With cooperation, Mr. Bateman was willing after that meeting to conduct a sound study. You should have probably all received that study. If you haven't, there is a short snippet of it within the documents that I provided you this evening. We're quite pleased that the study occurred, and as you will see from the findings, there is a concern for the potential purchasers of that land, the new homeowners that would be residing within our community. So the sound study identified that from our property reaching all the way to the far side of the community center reaches 70 decibels. 70 decibels is quite high, considered most areas would only receive, I believe in the 40s would be a standard residential neighborhood. So the study recommends that there is conditions placed upon each home within that area. So the purchasers are aware that they're purchasing a property that resides in a higher noise area. So they're going to have to agree to that before it even changes hands. There's also recommendations that certain properties, because of the level of decibels being at 70, at 1.5 meters above ground level at that area, that certain windows would not be able to be placed in a direction which would receive the higher levels of noise. So not only are these purchasers going to be faced with the decision if they want to come into a residential neighborhood of higher noise, but they would also be limited on the number of windows they'd have facing a certain area adjacent to the club. So this is a concern, and this is why we raised it in the first place. As you recall, Mr. Bateman was not originally requested to have this study done. It was not seen as necessary. My question is why was that overlooked? I know that's not going to get answered right now, and maybe not everybody sitting here will recall why that was not requested. But on behalf of the future purchasers, we from the club would not want anybody coming into that neighborhood and be blindsided. We would not want them to be caught off guard and realize after purchase that they now have the noise that we produce. And as we established in our previous discussion, that is grandfathered in not only from the operation of the club, but also from a bylaw. So we don't have anything that's been presented to us today that helps to mitigate noise. We have recommendations from the study, but we really don't have anything other than a couple documents and some waivers that people are going to agree to that can then later be challenged at the cost of both council and ourselves. So that is still of concern for us, is there is no mitigation to that noise or increased noise that those neighbors are going to receive. And that is a concern for us going forward. Addition to this, a environmental study was conducted, known as the, sorry, I'm looking at my right notes here. The Watkins report, which I believe the township has had requested back in 2002. At least this is what we know as the current report. We haven't seen anything more current than the 2022. I correct myself. This is the last report that we were able to see where a environmental assessment was done, and a number of recommendations came from that as well. Part of those recommendations talked about additional studies that need to occur to adjacent properties. One of the things we raised before was a groundwater or overland water assessment. This is mentioned within the Watkins report as a recommendation, but yet we have not seen anything to suggest that any additional studies will occur involving the environment. There's additional species at risk that they mention within this report as well for the developmental property as well as the adjacent properties. And again, we haven't seen anything to date to say that those are going to be addressed any further. Fencing is mentioned as well as a concern. As we operate from a provincial and federal level with our inspections, our property has been approved based on the fact that there is bush lot separating us from other residential areas. Those bush lots allow for a separation that puts a bit of a barrier between us and people wandering into our property, along with signage. Fencing has been discussed that it would be required. However, our property adjacent to the developmental property is all environmental sensitive land, not an area in which fencing or machinery could go through to install proper fencing to keep people from this new development from wandering into our property and into harm's way. Again, not something that we would want to happen. There's talk of a section that goes between both the edge of our property and another existing lot, which could end up being a pathway that's, again, environmentally sensitive area and not something in which we believe should be touched by machinery. However, on the developmental plan shows that there's a potential for access point there. I don't believe a roadway would go in, but there is mention of a pathway. So we have questions about why that would be put in on that section of land, again, if it affects the environmental sensitive areas. I realize I'm running short on time, so I will summarize here a bit more. The other thing that we came to learn quite recently, which was a surprise to us, was that not only is the application for Mr. Bateman's land for development being put before Perth County for an addition to Milverton Ward, but that includes the Rod and Gun property. We had not been informed at any level, and you'll see a map on, I believe it is the very last page of that document that we provided, attachment D. You'll see a proposed draft plan from Perth County, which shows our property and then properties past us to the south of us that's being developed as potential for being included into Milverton Ward. Again, we'd had no communication about that. We've heard nothing about our property being changed or being relocated to a different tax bracket or how that will impact us, nor have we heard how that will impact our current bylaw that we operate under within the township as well. So what we see is more questions than answers. We have not been sufficiently provided enough information to say that things are going to be mitigated from a risk standpoint, from an environmental standpoint, from a noise standpoint. nor have we, at our request from the last time we stood here, was to be informed of everything that had to do with this property being developed or anything that affected us. We have not yet received any correspondence directly from council or the township to let us know of any changes. These things have all come to our knowledge through happenstance or through our own research, which disappoints me as a resident of Milverton and as a taxpayer and as a representative of our club and the people that we bring into this area through different events that we run. So I ask you today to pause any decisions on moving forward until further answers are received and full evaluation of these findings from these reports that you have both paid for and others have paid for, like Mr. Bateman, have been fully reviewed and exercised. Thank you.
Okay, any questions from members of council? Okay, seeing no questions, thank you. Our second delegation is Rita and Jim Sniker.
Good evening. So I'm Rita Schneiker from Milverton.
Jim Schneiker, also from Milverton.
So we're representing the neighborhood adjacent to the property ready for development. We too addressed our concerns at the last meeting, and I'm going to reiterate, no responses were sent to us regarding our concerns, which they said they would be. So I'd like to raise them again for the second time. Still having these unanswered questions. There's 4 questions that we want to address. One is with regards to the noise complaints from the Rod and Gun. Second deals with drainage and sewage. Third one, the proposed retaining wall. And lastly, road access prior to development. So starting with number 1, I'm going to say all of Milverton hears the gunshots from a very active Rod and Gun. We're pleased to see that the clause was added in after the noise study, and it reads, purchasers and tenants are advised that due to the proximity of the adjacent Milverton Rod and Gun Club, noise from this facility may at times be audible. That just is a little bit ridiculous. May, how about will be audible? Everybody who lives in Milverton knows that Rod and Gun produces a lot of noise. So let's just be direct and tell them they're gonna hear noise. So with regards to now people have moved in and they're gonna have noise complaints, what actions, if any, will be taken by council? Who are they going to address? Is any of this going to be able to be held up in court? Question number 1. Number 2, with regards to drainage and sewage. We understand that with the increased elevation that's being proposed, that'll simplify drainage plans. We still talked about the existing municipal drain, the Ryder Pew drain, which goes from a backyard and ends up down Mill Street. Once the subdivision is built up, this drain will be further buried underground, which concerns us. Who's going to take care of that drain, the costs, and the maintenance of it? We haven't seen drainage plans for homes and things like that, and I understand that will come later once the proposed development goes through, and then the drainage of the homes will come up later, so I'm not going to address that at this point. In regards to the sewage, we see the location of a pump house. Our question is if it's going to be vented or sealed. Will there be any odor? If it's vented, that has bad implications for the neighborhood. So I don't know who knows anything about the pump house amongst the group. Thirdly is the proposed retaining wall. So we did see a diagram, and it appears to me as parallel to the highway. There's about a 2-meter retaining wall from the north end to the south end. 2-meter retaining wall on the back of the new properties. So now I have to assume that you're going to tell them they also need to have a fence. So in the backyards of the existing homeowners, there will be a 2-meter retaining wall and what? 1.5 meters.
Or 2 meters.
The other 2-meter wall, 4 meters of a wall. It appears as though we're building a bit of an island. Not thrilled with that big retaining wall and the fences that are going to need to go up there. And then when we think about a retaining wall, it'll be built, beautiful, good. Who maintains the retaining wall in the years to come? And how do they get access to it? It's a pretty big project when I look at the retaining wall. And I am a little bit uncertain from the diagram. I'm just the property owner. I don't know if the retaining wall is just on the one line or if it circles more of the perimeter of the property. I was unable to determine that from the diagram that I had. Our fourth point, we feel strongly that road access for this development needs to come off the highway. Currently, there's Wilfrid Street, which is a very narrow street. It's on the way to the park. It's on the way to the playground, the swimming pool, the baseball diamonds, the soccer fields. We don't want construction equipment coming down Wilfrid Street and trying to navigate a turn down Temperance. So we're requesting that before any development would start, that there would be a direct access road off the highway for the construction equipment and for the safety of our community. So those are the 4 points that we brought up last time. I guess we were thinking we'd get something back in writing, some sort of comments and stuff. What's valid, what's not valid, what do you approve or not approve? But maybe we just need to accept that the communication tends to be more one way. It's making us feel a little bit uneasy. So those are the 4 points that the neighborhood has concerns about.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from members of council? Nope, see no questions. Thank you for your presentation. Okay. Moving on in our agenda, we have no public meetings and no public hearings. So our first report is under planning, the County of Perth official plan amendment, and we have Jeff with us on the screen. Oh, Jeff's here in person. Sorry, Jeff. You're hiding.
Sorry, yes, I was in the corner. I apologize, I wasn't readily visible.
It's okay.
So Caroline Baker, on behalf of 180-3018 Ontario Incorporated, has submitted an official plan amendment to extend the Milverton settlement area to include the developable areas of the site and a separate official plan amendment to designate the lands as residential, highway commercial, and industrial. Zoning amendment was also submitted to rezone the lands in accordance with a plan of subdivision that is being proposed through a separate application. The property is abutting agricultural fields to the west, the Perth East Recreation Complex to the north, single detached dwellings and commercial to the east, the Rod and Gun Club, a woodlot and industrial subdivision to the south. Next slide, please. The subject lands are designated as agricultural, special policy, agricultural, urban fringe, natural resources environment in the Perth County official plan. The county official plan regulates the expansion of settlement areas. A 20-year time horizon is used in considering the issue of need. So the County of Perth is undergoing a review of the official plan, and a policy directions report was completed in April of 2020 in order to provide population projections and land needs assessments for the County of Perth. The report recommended at the time that the subject lands are to be included within the urban settlement boundary. The county official plan also provides guidelines for residential densities. Single detached dwellings are to be up to 15 units per hectare. Semi-detached dwellings are to have a density of 15 to 25 units per hectare. Townhomes are to have a density of 25 to 40 units per hectare. And the development is proposed is within those guidelines, or with the exception of the semi-detached dwellings, which are slightly higher at 26.9 units per hectare. The amendment to the County of Perth official plan is intended to bring the subject lands into the Milverton settlement area and to redesignate those lands as serviced urban area. And the separate official plan amendment to the Milverton official plan is intended to designate the lands as residential, highway, commercial, and industrial. The Milverton Ward official plan does not have a specific designation for areas of environmental significance, and the applicant is suggesting that a site-specific residential designation is placed on the woodland areas of the site, which would prohibit development in those areas, and that policy would be consistent with the County of Perth official plan natural resources environment designation. The proposed development includes a mix of residential housing types that are located to the north of the subject lands, to ensure compatibility with the existing residential area and to separate the proposed uses from the Milverton District and District Rod and Gun Club to the south of the lands. The submitted traffic brief has identified the development can be serviced from Perth Road 131 and the extension of Temperance Street. Industrial uses are appropriately separated from the commercial and residential uses that are existing on the opposite side of the stormwater management block. The lots are appropriately sized to accommodate industrial development. Next slide, please. The subject lands are adjacent to an agricultural area, and the official plan amendments intend to expand that area. And as a result, the evaluation of MDS is required under the provincial policy statement. So one of the guidelines is guideline number 12 of the MDS document, which states that a reduced MDS1 setback may be permitted provided that there are 4 or more non-agricultural uses, residential uses, or dwellings closer to the livestock facility than the proposed development. So in this case, MDS setback reductions are appropriate. The development that's being proposed provides for a housing option that meets the needs of the current and future residents in the area. The provincial policy statement recognizes the protection of natural features in areas, and the applicant has submitted a scoped environmental impact statement authored by Natural Resource Solutions Incorporated from 2020 of August, and the report was peer reviewed by BT Engineering. So the findings of that scoped EIS report include recommendations for mitigation measures and monitoring that are to be included in the design of the plan of subdivision, the subdivision agreement, and with industrial site plan approvals. The report concluded that if the recommended measures are followed, then the proposal would not have result in any negative impacts to the protected area. Next slide, please. The applicant is requesting that the subject lands are rezoned to facilitate development of this plan of subdivision. The subject lands are currently zoned agricultural. Future development, natural resources and environment zone 2. The applicant is proposing to rezone the lands to a residential medium density R2 zone with special provisions for reduced lot frontages, lot areas, side yards, and minimum distance separations. Also to a residential high-density R3 zone with special provisions for reduced side yards, increased maximum lot coverage, to a natural resources environmental zone NRE2, to an institutional zone, a highway commercial C3 zone with a holding provision, and an industrial M1 zone also with a holding provision. So those holding provisions are intended to be in place until a land use compatibility study and the scoped traffic brief has been completed to assess the proposed use on the property as part of a site plan application and approval process. Zoning that includes reduced yard requirements, increased lot coverage provisions are intended to allow for more compact development for the plan of subdivision that meets the minimum density targets of the county official plan. The applicant has recognized that the highway commercial and industrial zones permit a wide variety of potential uses, which could vary greatly in impact and compatibility. And they proposed that the land use compatibility study to be required before that holding provision can be lifted to allow development on the commercial or the industrial lands. Next slide, please. So from the public meeting and through our circulations, we've received various comments from agencies. We have received comments from our Perth East consulting engineer. They've stated that they have not completed their technical review of the calculations provided for the stormwater management, storm sanitary and water. But additional comments will be provided once a detailed design is completed, which is included as part of the subdivision process. Enbridge Gas has requested a condition of the subdivision draft approval that necessary easements are being provided for gas service. The Maitland Valley Conservation Authority has stated that they agree with the conclusions made in the environmental impact statement, and they have recognized that a monitoring program is expected in regards to water quality and quantity controls on the lands. Blue Water Recycling Association has provided a response detailing how their services can be provided to the plan of subdivision. So through the public consultation, notice of the applications were given on April 26th. Public meeting was held at the May 16th Perth East Council meeting for the Milverton Plan, official plan amendment, and the zone change application. And then a further public meeting was also held on May 18th for County Council for Perth County. As noted previously through our delegation, the Milverton and District Rod and Gun Club, they submitted a letter of opposition. And that petition was also signed by 8 area residents. So we've tried to address each of the concerns that have been identified through the responses, and we included that in a planning analysis section in the planning report. And just for interest, I'll go through some of those concerns and try to detail how they have been addressed, just so you have a better understanding. So for the noise and compatibility concerns, that was in relation mostly to the Milverton and District Rod and Gun Club. The environmental noise assessment was completed by the applicants, and it concluded that the noise attenuation from berms and barriers are predicted to be insufficient to mitigate the noise impacts from the gun club. So there really wasn't much that can be done on site through like berming or through a noise wall that's going to address a lot of that noise that comes from the Rod and Gun Club. So they felt that that wasn't really a suitable recommendation or a suitable solution to the problem. So the report recommends that no noise sensitive spaces are allowed to take place, so that you couldn't have windows facing the general south and west directions on the second floors of several of the lots in the plan of subdivision. You could still have windows allowed on the east and north facades of noise sensitive spaces that would be located on second story of dwellings if they decided to do 2-story dwellings. With inclusion of the window design restrictions, the report notes the development is expected to be in compliance with the modeled sound levels from the gun range. The detailed study also recommended once the massing and designing of each lot has been finalized, if windows are included on the second story, then they should have to look at that noise study again. So if they decided to do something that wasn't in conformity with what was being recommended, and they did want to put windows on the second story that was facing the gun club, they should complete further studies, another noise study, to see how that would affect those noise sensitive spaces. So the report also recommends warning noise clauses in agreements, which would be registered on title for each applicable dwelling as noted in the noise report. The subdivision agreement will include provisions for those noise warning clauses and the recommended window restrictions when we get to that planned subdivision phase. So for drainage, the applicant has submitted a functional servicing report and a preliminary storm water management report as part of the subdivision application. Our consulting engineer for the Township of Perth East has reviewed the submission and has confirmed that the drainage and the servicing can be addressed through the detailed subdivision design stage once they get to that next step. The environment concerns, the applicant has submitted a scoped EIS statement, which was authored by Natural Resource Solutions, and it was peer reviewed. The finding of the EIS included recommendations for mitigation measures and monitoring that will be included in the design of the plan of subdivision, the subdivision agreement, and with industrial site plan approvals. The report noted that wildlife is being protected by the buffering of the natural area and the placement of the stormwater management facility and the placement of the industrial blocks. So they act as a natural buffer from the residential areas to the sensitive environmental areas. Locational buffer provides additional distance separation from those areas and human activity that could threaten wildlife. Permanent fencing is being recommended between the development and the natural area. So that natural area should be fenced so that you don't have people that walk into that natural area or inadvertently walk towards the Milverton Rod and Gun Club. Homeowners' brochures to be included with the subdivision agreement, and detailed lighting designs are to be provided at the design stage of the plan of subdivision. Directional lighting is to be provided for developments that are within 30 meters of the natural features. So the development is intended to maintain pre-development flows for water to the wetland, and ongoing monitoring of the stormwater management facility is being recommended. So that subdivision agreement will include conditions to implement the findings of that scoped environmental impact study. The report also concluded that the recommended measures are followed, then the proposal would not result in any negative impacts to the protected areas. So a traffic brief was also submitted by Traffic Mobility. The study concluded all study intersections are expected to operate with an acceptable level of service during the weekday peak hours under future total conditions. The study identified that a left turn lane may be warranted entering the subdivision from Perth Road 131. And the study noted that impacts on the existing residential streets are considered to be minimal, as drivers are expected to use that Perth Road 131 as the main connection to the new subdivision. Stop signs are being identified as being required at the intersection of several of those streets, Street D and A, and also Streets B and D. So for development costs and existing property access, the applicant is required to pay for the standard development costs associated with the proposed development. The existing properties with road frontage on Perth Road 131 will still maintain access to that highway. The proposed development is not expected to accommodate a second access at the rear of those dwellings, as the second access would create additional subdivision design concerns, including less functional traffic movements within that plan of subdivision. So as a result, the planning department has no concerns with official plan amendments and the zoning bylaw amendment as proposed. Planning staff are recommending that Perth East Council provide comments to Perth County Council, recommending that Perth County OPA and the Milverton Official Plan Amendment 12 are approved, and that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is approved in principle. If the zoning bylaw amendment is approved in principle, the amending bylaw would be brought back to Perth East Council once the official plan amendments have both been approved and are in place. The applicants are consistent with the provincial policy statement. They conform with the County of Perth official plan, and in our opinion, they represent good planning. I'm available to answer questions relating to the reports.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. I'm not sure if everyone can see in the screen, but we have Caroline Baker joining us as well. She is the planner for the application. Let's go to questions. Sorry, Caroline. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. Would you like me to wait for questions, or I just have a few brief comments? I'm at your wish.
Well, we did have some questions from the two delegations. Maybe, were you on then? Maybe you could answer some of those questions?
Of course. No, certainly I'd be happy to. So maybe just for the record, my name's Caroline Baker from Baker Planning Group. Good evening to Mayor Agates, members of council, and certainly thank you to Mr. Bannon for a very comprehensive presentation addressing the application. Maybe just a few additional points of clarification from the comments received this evening. So first, I just wanted to note this property is a little bit unique in that, of course, the official plan amendment before you is proposing to bring the land into the settlement area. However, a number of years ago, there was an official plan amendment on this site that in fact already permits industrial uses. So there are urban uses permitted on the site. And through these applications, seeking to bring a little bit more clarity to the land, make it clear it's in the settlement area, and have a range of designations from light industrial, commercial, and residential. The applications, as Mr. Bannon mentioned, are related to the official plan and the zoning, certainly a draft plan of subdivision with appropriate conditions, implementing all of the recommendations of the technical studies would come back to council for review and consideration. With respect to the comments received, so I just wanted to start off on the noise study and the comments from the gun club. So certainly SLR Consulting was retained. They are acoustical engineers, and they did prepare the noise impact assessment in keeping with ministry standards, which is the NPC 300 guidelines and the D6 guidelines. So what they found is with their recommendations being limits on building heights for certain units, as well as the noise warning clauses, which are pre-written warning clauses from the ministry, that these residential uses would be in compliance to be in this location and the separation proposed from the gun club. So certainly when the draft plan comes back, you'll see some of those warning clauses and conditions included in the draft plan conditions. I'm not sure I can answer any specific land use change to the gun club property itself. I'm not sure if they're referring to the county's official plan review that's been posted online, so I might have to defer to Mr. Bannon to answer that question. The second item came up certainly with regards to traffic. Mr. Bannon mentioned, the majority of traffic will be directed to Road 131. Certainly the owner is willing to work with staff in terms of construction access and how to monitor and maintain and coordinate that access during construction. There was some questions about the environmental impact study, woodland protection and fencing. So certainly the woodland is being protected along with a 10-meter buffer. The proposed fence would actually be to the drip line or further setback. It wouldn't be within the woodlot, of course, to not impact the woodland. And the way the stormwater management has been designed on the site is to maintain the flows to that feature. So there is that water balance that will occur. So there will be, of course, no negative impact to the environmental features. There was a comment with respect to the drainage route. So there is a drainage route along the northern portion of the property that runs in an east-west direction. Certainly this was included in the engineering design. We've had an opportunity to work with township staff and BM Ross, and certainly that right of flow will of course be protected through draft plan of subdivision and detailed design. I did want to clarify the retaining wall. I think the drawing that shows the retaining wall may have led to a little bit of confusion. Certainly the site needs to be raised to deal with matters related to sanitary and stormwater management, but the retaining wall isn't in fact along the entire east side of the proposed development. It's limited to being adjacent to 3 residential lots. And the retaining wall is located within the municipal right-of-way with some spacing provided to ensure that things like maintenance and access can be provided. The last question I think we received, and I might have to defer, Cameron Moffat from MTE, who is a civil engineer, is available. He's in person this evening. There was a question about the lift station on the north portion of the site and how it would be vented. I'm going to hazard a guess that's probably a detailed design through construction, but maybe if he can elaborate on that, I wouldn't want to give the incorrect answer on that. But I believe those are the questions that we've received. Certainly if I've missed something or council has any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Okay, questions from council? Hugh?
Yeah, on in our agenda package here on page 93, page 80, you talk about price affordability. So can you give us some kind of a ballpark figure, if this is built, what kind of price you'd be looking for these semi-detached and detached houses and single family houses?
Through the mayor, I might have to defer. Mr. Bateman is in the audience. I'm not sure at this point if he has a price range. As you can imagine, with all the fluctuating construction prices, it is a challenge. But of course, housing affordability is a very important matter. So I don't know. I unfortunately, with the size of the screen, can't see the audience from here. So I don't know if he wants to elaborate on sort of some of his thoughts in terms of price range for the various types of housing units.
Okay, and on page 91, you show a block 53, but to the east of it, the land has no number on it. So why would block 53, why would it not be part of the block to the north of it? Why would it be a separate block by itself? And why would the block to the east of it not have a number?
The block east to it, there's a component of it it's a separate property. So it doesn't form part of the draft plan of subdivision, so it wouldn't have a block number on it.
Block 53, though, you do own that, do you not? Like, is that not part of the property?
Oh, correct. So yes, block 53 is part of the property, why it's given a block number. My understanding is there's an opportunity to give that to the neighboring property owner to the east. So it has to be legally defined on the draft plan to allow for a transfer.
Oh, okay. And I noticed that there was parkland for it. It will be cash in lieu of land. So basically, when the subdivision is done, who gets all this environmental land, like the forest and all that kind of stuff? Where does that go? Who owns it?
Through the mayor, there is different options that can be explored through the draft plan of subdivision. Traditionally, we used to see the Conservation Authority taking ownership of environmental land, but now there's various options between the township, and if they don't have an interest, there are a number of conservancy trusts that are taking these woodlots to ensure that they get maintained and protected.
Okay. And when you talk about noise, I actually went out and talked to a bunch of residents on the north side of Milverton, and they can quite clearly hear the gun club when they're shooting. So putting windows on a different side of the house, I can't see that that's going to be of any help whatsoever. And the traffic, when you talk about that, they talk about a left turn possibly on 131. It doesn't say who's going to pay for that.
So a few questions. So certainly the noise study found potential audible from the gun club. I think there's full agreement with respect to the resident comments and the noise study. What the noise study is demonstrating is that the noise level it creates is deemed acceptable by the ministry and their land use compatibility and noise assessment guidelines for sensitive land use, which is residential. In terms of the traffic, you are correct. The traffic study recommended the potential for a left turn lane into the subdivision. What the traffic study found is that the warrant for the left turn lane isn't actually created by the development, but what we call background traffic and future traffic. So background traffic is traffic that already exists on the roadway. As you know, there's development going into the south of this property that'll also generate traffic. So certainly we are working with township staff on the cost for that left turn lane, and that'll be included as part of a draft plan condition.
And just when it comes to traffic, traffic always finds the easiest way to go. So if that causes people to back up, then they're going to go up and they're going to use that little two-way street. And we've all seen how traffic finds the easiest way to go. So I would think that that turn lane would have to be there. Background, there's a lot of people, but if there's going to be how many, maybe 1,000 people live in that subdivision, that's an awful lot of people that are going to be wanting to get in there. And I can see them going up and using that other street. And
About a third of that people.
okay, I yield.
Any more questions?
Through
Sorry, go ahead, Carolyn.
I was just going to say that within this proposed plan of subdivision, there's 72 residential lots, just in terms of size and scale, and maybe I didn't communicate very well. It's understood that the left turn lane is a requirement from the traffic study, so that there isn't the backup or queuing, and that there isn't traffic then heading north trying to skirt around, because certainly, yes, most drivers will find the quickest way to get where they want to go.
Okay, Jeremy?
Yeah, you had indicated that block 53 had the opportunity to be conveyed to the property to the east, but that's part of the same block, isn't it? Like the that corner property, it's identified as block 53. That's all part of this proposal, is it not? There's nothing to the east but the road, I think. Can you just clarify that? That's what I think you had just said. I just want to make sure that I'm.
Yes, certainly, maybe for clarity. So there's a property, and I apologize, I don't have the air photo might help a little bit more, but what you'll see, so you'll see block 53 is a really long, narrow piece. And then what you'll see on the, I'll call it the northern piece of block 53, I really wish I had a pointer to help. It does abut an existing property on Perth Road 131. So you can see, you're correct that the corner of line 61 and Perth Road 131 is a portion of the site. What happens when you create the block is that they naturally sever. So you get when block 53 gets created, the little piece right at the corner gets naturally severed from it, and then it can be added to the adjacent parcel. So that'll be included in a future draft plan of subdivision that comes before council should the official plan be approved.
So who takes ownership of that southeast corner property then, that abuts 61 and 119?
That would be the adjacent property owner.
To the east, you had said earlier, but there's no property owner to the east.
To the north, the gentleman that owns that property is interested in taking that property and the proposed one-time roadway going up there, which will not be a roadway anymore. They'd be interested in purchasing that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Could you come up?
That's.
Mr. Bateman, could you come up to the microphone, please? And then when there's questions.
I apologize.
No, it was just indicated it was a property owner to the east, so I guess it's the property owner to the north and the east, I guess. Smaller on the east.
Jeff Bateman.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's called me a number of times to see if he would be interested in selling that property. I have to know what I can and can't do with that property. He occasionally goes in, and we've marked some trees working with Marvin Smith that had to come down that were going to fall across the roadway or things like that. So he's been cutting a couple trees down. That little stretch of land between his property and the actual bush is my property as well, and he grazes some horses in there. So he just thought it might give them a little bit more room to go up and around, and then have the bush lot there just as a protector, and occasionally go in and remove what had to be removed for safety's sake. That he just said he'd like to have that piece of property, and I'd make it very easily affordable for him.
And that's where the drainage outlet goes right now? Into that property, or?
Well, it comes out, it goes through the bush, and it works across and goes through. He's just going to be in there. He won't be developing anything in there ever. The bush at certain times of the year is damp, and I'm sure Bill will let you know that, coming down through the middle and then working its way, trying to get to the culvert primarily.
Okay, Jeremy, any more questions?
Yeah, like I have about a dozen more questions here, unless someone else wants to go. Like the majority of this development is in the ward that I represent, so I have a number of questions, concerns. But if someone else would like to take the floor for a couple minutes while I collect a couple more of these, that's fine.
Okay, Jared?
Yeah, thanks through you, Mayor. For the rod and gun, your portion being added to, as part of the OP review, that's through the county. So that, I think the draft is coming Thursday to the county meeting. And then there's a schedule set out for public submissions, et cetera, for next year at some point. So that would be the time for you to come for that. My main concern is the construction access during construction. Excuse me, it was mentioned that perhaps staff could help out with that, but is there something that we can actually do to say no construction access, excuse me, on Wilford and Temperance during the whole process? That's something I'd like to see because of the factors that were stated, the recreation in the area. The Wilford is very small, narrow street, so that's one of my main concerns. I'm not sure if staff can help answer that, or if planning, or where we can go with that to make sure.
Jerry, the very first road we put in would be from 119. And we would only develop that north end when we got to that point. And at that point, like I say, the guardrail come down, we'd have to work that property. Will we be up on that pad? Yeah, to get some equipment in and stuff, but we won't have to come from Wilfrid Street with heavy equipment at all.
So how do we police that? How can we make sure that that doesn't happen? Is there something that gets put on the subdivision agreement, or?
I apologize, I don't want to interrupt or speak out of turn, but certainly, depending on township staff's comments, is yes, it could be included in the subdivision agreement that's registered on title and or any servicing construction permits that would be issued.
Okay, anyone else with questions? Bob?
Well, there was a question alluded to about the gun club property being, and I guess this is probably for Jeff, brought into the Milverton ward, so that would be something I'm not aware of. Maybe it's in the new official plan, but maybe you could speak to that.
Through the mayor. So right now, there is no intention through these applications to bring in lands outside of the subject lands. So the Milverton Rod and Gun Club would not be included in this amendment and being brought into the settlement area. And then through the county official plan, that's a process that's ongoing. And I'd have to look to see exactly where that settlement area boundary is proposed to be, but it's all going to be included. All of the Milverton official plan ward would be consumed by the county official plan. We'll only have one official plan at that point in time. If you give me a minute, I can see if I can find a settlement boundary to see if that's been included in
Is that it right there?
their process.
That's it.
Yeah, just to help Jeff out, in the draft maps that will go to county council on Thursday, it is showing the gun club. It's basically squaring off that section with the Percon lands as well within the urban boundary.
But that's not what we're after tonight. Tonight, we're after an official plan amendment for the property that Mr. Bateman owns. Okay, any other questions, Bob? Keep going.
Again, there was a question that alluded to the legality of the provincial noise warning, I guess, if you will. If Jeff or Caroline can maybe elaborate a little more on how often this is used or what kind of teeth it has in it.
I can start if that helps, and certainly Mr. Bannon can elaborate or add to. So the noise warning clauses are actually set out by the Ministry of the Environment, and they have published set warning clauses depending on the use and the noise level rating. What they're there for is, obviously, of course, to protect the sensitive land use, but they're also there to protect where the noise source is coming, so that if there is complaints, that the noise source, being the gun club in this instance, has the legal backing in terms of meeting the ministry guidelines on noise. They're in compliance with the noise that they are generating for their surrounding land uses. So they're it maintains them being legally in compliance with the new development. I can't confirm whether they're in legal compliance with other existing sensitive land uses, but certainly with the new proposed, they would be in legal compliance.
Okay, you have anything to add, Jeff?
I think she covered, I think Ms. Baker covered that quite well. So the residential area, all those areas would have noise warning clauses on the lots that are affected, and that's registered on title. And it's included in the subdivision agreement. So there's some protection there so that anyone that brings forward a complaint to Perth East, they have a subdivision agreement that they've been presented with and they've been given those legal documents. So it's difficult for them to voice concerns on noise that's being generated because they would have been made aware of that situation before purchasing the properties in that area.
Okay, any more, Bob? No, okay, Amanda?
More of a comment. So I've seen in other parts of the province, not related to gun clubs, but landfills, for example, where people sign a clause and it doesn't stop people from making complaints, and people lobby to shut down facilities. So whether that would be a landfill, whether that be a gun club, we've seen it happen in Wilmot where, you know, obviously the council of the day, like there would be constant delegations from residents coming forward. And so for me, that's my biggest concern because I've seen it happen, whether it's with gun clubs, landfills, other things. Yes, people sign the agreement. They are supposedly made aware of their surroundings and things change. And so that is my biggest concern and worry. So I just wanted to, it's just more of a comment that I just wanted to vocalize.
Okay, Jerry?
Yeah, just my last one. Would like to hear from MTE on the pumping, what if they know what that's going to be. And yeah, again, it's as I stated in May, it's under no intentions, at least myself, and I would assume the entire council would have any inkling of trying to close down the gun club. I know it's may not be within our hands, it would be a provincial thing, but as long as I'm here, that gun club's not getting closed.
Okay, any?
If he can answer the question.
Oh. Can you answer the question, the pumping station? If we'd like you to come to the mic then, please. And state your name, please. So,
Cameron Moffat with MTE. The design of the pump station would be completed with Perth standards and Perth East standards, sorry. And through the detailed design process. So that hasn't happened yet and is not my area of expertise. So I'd rely on other staff at MTE to look at that, but we would ensure that it's compliant with any applicable standards in the area.
Does that mean it can be self-contained without off-gassing, or?
I don't know offhand, sorry. I can't answer that.
Do we have any other areas in Milverton, let's say, that have pumping stations similar to this for sewage?
I think.
Yeah, if I could add, there is a pumping station just on Mill Street East, which would be very similar to this in theory, and we have not received any issues or any complaints around that pumping station. So I would have to imagine this would be designed in a similar way. So.
That's on the corner, like by the retention ponds there, on the corner of Mill Street.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Jeremy, you got more questions now?
Yeah, I've got a couple more. The noise warning clauses that everyone's talking about here, set out by the ministry, I guess. Have they been tested in court? Do we know if there's been a precedent set about these things? So like my primary concern, again, gun club, safety of the residents during construction, and the drainage issue is a big one as well. I'm sure that gets addressed through site plan and what have you, all that other stuff. So if we look at, you know, the safety of the residents, making sure that it's coming in off of 119, that's great. But then we're back to the club and making sure the longevity of the club and that it continues to exist. And I'm curious if there is any, you know, going through the report that Matt distributed here, like some of my concerns align with what they're talking about here. And the number one thing is whether or not that's been tested. You know, 72 residences in there, every residence puts in $500 or $1,000, and they can fight that, some homeowners association, what have you. So I'm curious if it's been tested, how it would actually work, if it has worked, if there's any case law surrounding that.
I'll try my best to answer that one. So certainly I'm not a lawyer or been involved in particularly case law, but I think the best way to frame it to explain the situation is it's like a zoning bylaw when you have a range of permitted uses that are allowed on a property. If the report and its recommendations are implemented, it maintains that the gun club is legally operating under the Ministry of the Environment guidelines for the proposed residential uses, and in fact probably will be in better compliance than the existing surrounding residential uses on Road 131. So certainly there's closer proximate residential uses to the gun club than what is being proposed by the subdivision. And with the additional measures limiting height, windows, and the warning clauses, it actually brings the new homes are in are in compliance with ministry standards. So I don't know if you want to use the word term better compliance, but they bring it into compliance so that if the gun club were to apply for their ECA, so their essentially approval to operate as a gun club with the ministry, they would have no concerns with these residential uses. So it's like a zoning bylaw that they are legally in conformance. So it's probably the best way I can answer it because I don't have access to case law searches to assist with that particular component of the question.
I would be curious about that from our perspective at a municipality implementing something like that. I mean, we have 4 or 5 residences that might be closer, but then we have 72 brand spanking new ones that are slightly further away. So that's a concern to me. Are there other solutions that would be better than north-facing windows and noise warning clauses on title? Is there any other solutions that can be provided, you know, probably at a higher cost, but I'm wondering if there's other solutions as well, because I don't want to get backed into a corner legally if we are challenged on it. I'm not sure who that question's for. Is there other solutions to mitigate the sound from leaving that property so it doesn't get to the subdivision?
Through the mayor, I can try to answer that for you. So certainly when SLR prepared the noise or acoustical assessment, they looked at a variety of alternative measures to ensure that the proposed residential, which is a sensitive land use, was in compliance with ministry standards. The noise wall was considered, and given the type of noise source and how it disperses and the dispersion modeling that they prepared, a noise wall is actually less effective than the recommendations that have been proposed by the acoustical engineer. So they do consider all the tools in the toolbox in the best way to ensure compliance, to protect the noise source, which is the gun club. And these were deemed to be the most suitable and most appropriate to have that compliance.
Matthew mentioned overland water report. I haven't heard of that item until now. I'm wondering what we meant by that, Matt.
Yeah, sorry, there was, apologies. Thank you.
Maybe I would better address that.
Attachment B, which is the BTE study. If you look at point 4 on page 5 of 7, it talks about drainage from the subject site may contribute to these adjacent features and a water course south of the subject site. We recommend that a field survey and subsequent analysis through SEIS be completed to confirm no impacts to these features on adjacent lands, thus the rod and gun and the protected space in between. So we haven't seen any further analysis. If you look at some of the other recommendations above that, as we was talking about the species affected as well, but that study was where it was suggesting additional reviews be conducted, but as we stated, we hadn't seen anything to that effect.
Is there, Jeff, is there a reason that we wouldn't request that then if one of our consultants is asking for it? Sorry, for Jeff Bannon.
Through the mayor. So yeah, I'm just trying to pull up the EIS report. If there's a recommendation in there for further studies, yes, we'd be asking for those further studies to be completed. A copy of it.
So it's points 1 through 4 is where they've made these recommendations. This is an excerpt from their report from 2022.
Sorry, just give me a quick moment here and I will see if I can find exactly where this is in the document.
Well, Jeff's reviewing, to your earlier point, we'd be happy to look at other mitigation options if there's a point if there's a time and place to have those discussions for the noise aspect. If there's something within our property that could be a joint effort, we'd be happy to have those discussions as well.
Do we know if that was looked at in the noise study?
It was not something that we were made aware of.
Okay, so through the mayor, I'm just looking at the attachment, and I'm not sure if this was from the original document that was submitted or the revised. So there was questions that were brought up through the original environmental impact statement, that was the study that was completed. It was peer reviewed. The peer review asked questions back to the applicant. They made changes. They had their consultant make changes to the documents. And those changes from that document, the studies that are being requested are being recommended to be addressed through the subdivision plan and through the subdivision agreement, including things like future monitoring for the next 2 years for that stormwater management area, to ensure that those things get implemented, and fencing around the environmental sensitive area. From my understanding of reading through the document as revised, they've addressed all of the comments in the EIS, and our peer review has confirmed that same thing, saying that the EIS document as submitted does address the concerns environmentally speaking in the area, whether it's be wildlife, whether it's stormwater management runoff, water, how it's being addressed, making sure that it has the same flows in and out that was there prior to the subdivision going into place. So my understanding is that it's all been addressed through the environmental impact statement, and the recommendations will be caught through the subdivision agreement and the conditions that are included in that subdivision agreement.
So there may be additional studies required if the OPA is granted and the subdivision agreement comes forward.
Through the mayor, there could be additional requirements. There are requirements or recommendations in that EIS that will be included in the draft plan conditions. So when we get to that draft plan approval stage, we'll ensure that the recommendations of the EIS are included in the draft the agreement for a plan of subdivision and those draft approval conditions to make sure that the EIS is being implemented. And if the EIS says that monitoring is going to be required, that would be included as part of those draft plan conditions.
Okay.
Can I make one comment, Jeremy? Do you mind? Mayor?
Go ahead.
Sorry. So this study was what we were able to obtain. If there's been anything post that, it's not something that's been available to us, and it doesn't sound to your knowledge that it's been well documented or communicated either. The other thing is if it's something that is continuous monitoring, that's something that's after the fact. So we've already created an issue. We've already allowed the issue to occur. So to say that they're going to go and study and then realize 2 years later that they've made a mistake and they should have done something further, then it's already too late. We've already impacted the environment at that point. Why would we allow it get to that point when we have an opportunity now to do proper planning and look at all the aspects that could affect the environment in that area? Thank you.
Jeff, what Matt's saying, the control around that is that we wouldn't assume the subdivision until these items are addressed. Is that right?
Through the mayor, that's not necessarily true. You can assume the plan of subdivision, and we'll include conditions in the agreement to make sure that things are being done, including things like monitoring. So what's being proposed now and what's been sent to our engineering consultant and what's been peer reviewed through the EIS show that the development that's being proposed can be constructed in that everything that they've done up to this point will address the stormwater management, will address the drainage on site, and it's all being properly developed. But in order to ensure that it's being developed properly, to make sure that nothing's being missed, they will do further monitoring, or they're recommending the monitoring in that area to make sure that we don't have any loss of trees. So we can include provisions in the subdivision agreement saying, if there's been some detriment to that area as a result of this development, you have to replace those trees and address the situation. So that's what the monitoring is intended to address, is to make sure that there's not further complications that weren't considered or that were missed or something that has come up that wasn't planned for in the detailed design. It's not expected that that could happen, but it gives you further assurances that if something does happen that's not expected to take place, we have some sort of control to make sure that they address the situation after the fact.
But if we've assumed the subdivision, what's our control? Are we holding cash in lieu of, or how do we determine, how do we make sure that it does get taken care of if we've already assumed the subdivision and that becomes our property?
Through the mayor, there's just different mechanisms that I've seen in place before. You could hold back money. You could ensure that, usually it's a financial commitment. You can say that for these amount of trees, if some are 50 of them are being protected, make sure that you have the funds in place to replace those 50 trees. If that's what comes out of the subdivision agreement and the recommendation. So it can be dealt with through a financial contribution or withholding of funds in the subdivision agreement. Now, we haven't got to that stage yet. We don't have draft plan approval conditions before you because we're not dealing with the plan of subdivision today. We'll deal with that at a future council meeting after we deal with official plan amendment and we have the zoning in place.
The fence that's being talked about as a buffer, does that go along the edge of the bush lot, or is that going along the edge of the, like, is that going through the environmentally sensitive area, or is that going around that bush?
Go ahead.
Whichever one, Caroline or Jeff?
I'll try to take the question, and if Caroline wants to jump in if I miss anything. The intention is not to go through the middle of the woodlot or this environmentally protected area. It's to go around the outside of that area, so it protects everything. It protects the wildlife, it protects the trees, protects the marsh area, so that we don't have human activity that would trespass onto those lands. So we'd follow the NRE zone and fence that out. Now, if we decided to put a walkway into the south end of the site so that there's access out to line 61, then the fence, in my mind, would probably go along the western boundary of that, because that's the area that you're trying to protect, and you want to make sure that we protect the Milverton Gun Club from any sort of trespass. I don't know if you'd want to fence it on both sides. My only concern with fencing on both sides, you might get greater protection of some of that environmental area, but it does create almost a zone of entrapment where you have like a boundary, a fence line on both sides walking into a site, and if it's not properly lit, then it becomes a SEPTED crime prevention concern that you might have people walking through there and they don't have a path to get out of if it was a narrow area. So my suggestion would probably put a fence on the west side to protect the larger woodlot and to protect the Milverton Gun Club. But we haven't got to that stage where we have that included in any draft conditions because we're not quite there yet.
Right, we're looking at the OPA now.
Okay,
Yeah, back to my very first point, I still have concern about how this noise warning clause holds up in court if it's being fought. And I wonder about other methods to control the sound other than what's being proposed. And if the proponent and the club can work together to figure something out, that would be great. But until I think I see something that would verify for me that that will work, I want to protect the longevity of that club.
Okay, Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess first I'd like to just say it's great. We got local proponents, staff engaged, and consultants and ratepayers involved. It's not a spectator sport, so that's really good. We're very fortunate to have people who want to invest in Perth East. It's great. So to Mayor Agat's comment, we're definitely looking at just a very narrow thing. All the details, I've got a pile here over the last 30, 40 hours on the Christmas weekend. I'm not going to go that way. I'm just going to look at the recommendation. So the recommendation is to take industrial, commercial-ish land and move it into various components of add various residential uses to this, and that's basically all we're looking at tonight. So I'm gonna get rid of, you guys will be happy with this. I'm not gonna talk here. Maybe it's my Christmas shirt. I don't know. I'm gonna give you a gift. I'm just gonna stick to the report and questions about the question question at hand. So on page 2 of the Baker report, which is our page 84, the top bullet point says housing market research study by Watson. Additional land required, Milverton settlement area. So I'm looking at the charts, and I'm seeing, if you look at the addition of the 7.24 hectares on the Smith Drive Macbeth Street development we recently pulled out of mothballs, we are not really needing this. So, and we're way over. Actually, the only exception in the Watson report, in the whole report for Perth County, that we have a huge excess of industrial land already. So I'm just trying to resolve, without getting into it too deep, that I think I was on council with maybe in 2010-ish, and we looked at this in an area in Shakespeare, moving this into what was described as, I'm not sure, but so yeah, it made sense at that time with the commercial area on the highway there, and then the active farming on the other side. I'm not sure I'd want to how far one of those old manure spreads, but hopefully it won't hit the side of the house. That maybe the basic question we're looking at, is this appropriate? Does it fit the residential component? And I'm just, the question is yeah, I believe I'm reading the Watson report correctly, and not to throw water on any of the fire that's been burning for development in Ontario, but yeah, I just don't think I personally have a justification, in my opinion, to move this ahead, regardless of anything, of the gun club, of anything else like that. So if I want to, possibly Baker Group wants to make a comment, or planning wants to make a comment, I don't see that we need this development in its current form.
Certainly, I can start with an answer through the mayor. So there's a number of components in that with respect to the provincial policy statement. So I'm sure through the comprehensive review, there's been presentations on the justification and the rigors of the justification in order to bring land into the settlement area. So there were several components to the justification. The first, as I mentioned earlier, this property is very unique in that while it's outside the settlement area, it already permits urban land uses. Historically in the county of Perth, as opposed to bringing land in through a settlement area expansion, a number of properties were given special policy areas and left outside the settlement area. So in my view and in my opinion, the first component of this application is to bring clarity to this property, that if industrial uses are in fact permitted, it should be part of the settlement area and not part of the prime agricultural area. So that's sort of the first component. The second component is then we looked at, okay, if it's in the settlement area, what is an appropriate mix and range of uses, and are they justified in light of the provincial policy statement? The reason the owner is proposing light industrial, commercial, and residential, and you see it in sequence moving from south to north, is to provide that transition of uses. Certainly you have Percon to the south as industrial. Then we moved the Woodlot light industrial, then commercial and residential. So this transition helps with land use compatibility, and you're providing that separation. And then the residential proposed within this subdivision is adjacent to the existing residential. So instead of industrial, which is currently permitted next to the existing residential, it would be residential. So again, good land use planning, land use compatibility, and transition of uses. With respect to Watson, I believe originally they had recommended around 11 hectares of additional residential land in Milverton. This development, while the report says that 7.2 hectares are coming in, that's not all residential. So it's not taking up 7.2 hectares of the 11. It's around 3.5-4 hectares that would be residential out of the 11. The other thing I understand with the new draft report released by the county that is going, I believe that would be on Thursday, is similarly, it's recommending based on the Watson findings that this property come into the settlement area of Milverton for the residential, light industrial, and commercial uses. Certainly I'd let Mr. Bannon speak in terms of his review and recommendation from a planning perspective.
Through the mayor. So yes, I don't disagree with Caroline's comments. The lands are being proposed, or they are designated already as agricultural special, and they allow some of those industrial and light industrial uses on those lands. So they're already being contemplated for development in that area. And then the original studies that were proposed said that there was a need for the residential component and that it was reasonable to include that residential component. And that's why they brought forward these applications. And it is only for a portion. The residential is only a portion. The way that they designed the site, I think, is a reasonable way and represents good land use planning, where they're keeping the residential component as far away from their Milverton Rod and Gun Club as possible. And it increases the compatibility with the existing residential in the surrounding area that's already been developed. And it gives us sort of a zone of transition from that residential development to commercial, industrial as you get closer to the roadway. So I think that they've done a great job at trying to alleviate some of those concerns and alleviate as best as they can the transition of uses, land uses in that area.
Okay, Andrew?
No, thank you for the opinions. So the second part of that is recently we removed some commercial industrial from that Smith Drive Macbeth Street development. Is that going to be replaced? Because now we're taking away more. Was there any discussion at planning staff meetings if we're going to be replacing that? Because it's more of the light commercial, like say, I don't know, I'm not going to do a hypothetical here, but it relates to the question. Say, I don't know, a big box store or something wants to move into Milford. It's getting big enough that we're almost there, right? Some substantial entity, there'd be no shovel-ready footprint, in my opinion, that would, just looking at the map, that would facilitate that without taking more land, right? I know we have the stuff on the other side of the highway near the card lock in the back underneath, I believe it's the Puce subdivision, but I'm not sure what that's zoned as. And it's already in the settlement area, if I'm not mistaken, right? Undeveloped, but in the settlement area. So do we have shovel-ready land to replace, well, the one we've already taken, which isn't a question tonight, but this one we're removing a significant portion of for the light commercial is what I think makes the most sense. But I don't think what the category of industrial is. So is that factored into the consideration?
I can try and answer that if you'd like. I have familiarity with the Smith Drive application. So I believe what you're referring to is in the Smith Drive application, there was a redesignation for 2 small blocks to go from commercial to residential. Certainly with respect to this proposal, currently commercial is not permitted on the site. So there is in fact no removal of commercial lands on this site as a result of the applications. The current permitted uses are industrial. So this is actually adding new commercial to the Milverton settlement area. They are not significantly sized blocks in terms of a grocery store. Modern grocery stores take very large footprints, but certainly this is adding 2 new commercial blocks that weren't otherwise permitted. So it's increasing the provision of commercial lands in the settlement area.
Okay, any other questions? Nope, okay. We do have a motion, I'll put that out then. Okay, that Council of the Township of Perth East received the report dated December 19th, 2023, prepared by the planner entitled County of Perth Official Plan Amendment Number 213, Milverton Official Plan Amendment Number 12, and Zoning Bylaw Amendment D14-Z12-2022-PE, submitted by Caroline Baker on behalf of 1803018 Ontario Inc., affecting lands described as Lot 6, Concession 3, Milverton Ward, Township of Perth East for information, and that Council approve in principle zoning bylaw amendment D14-Z12-2022-PE submitted by Caroline Baker affecting land described as Lot 6, Concession 3, Milverton Ward, Township of Perth East, and that 3 readings be given to bylaw 66-2023 being a bylaw to approve OPA Milverton number 12, and that the Township of Perth East provide a recommendation to Perth County Council that official plan amendment number 213 and official plan amendment number 12 affecting the lands as described above be approved. So we need a mover and a seconder. Do we have a mover? Moved by Jerry. Do we have a seconder? Second by Bob. Is there any more comments or questions? Jeremy?
A question on the approve in principle statement here. Don't think we do that all that often. What are the ramifications of that? I mean, it has to come back to us anyways. So why approve in principle? It allows the proponent to go back and do some additional work to bring back a final approval? Or how would this work? Because I'm not sure of the last time that we approved something in principle and then it came back for an actual approval.
I'll let Jeff answer that.
Yeah, through the mayor. So this is something that we've dealt with in other townships recently. Approving something in principle, such as a zoning bylaw amendment, gives some sort of surety to the developer that the plans are going to be moving ahead, that you're recommending that you're comfortable with the bylaw as it's been written and the zoning that's being proposed. It goes to the county. They make they complete their approval of the official plan amendment, and then just the bylaw comes back. So there's no further report, no further discussion unless it's being brought up by members of council if they wanted to discuss it when it comes back. But the intention is that you're basically approving it now, but you can't actually complete the bylaw because the bylaw can't be approved in the final form without the official plan moving ahead first.
Okay. Hugh?
I'd like to move an amendment that we receive it for information.
The report?
Yep.
Okay, so Hugh's amending that we receive the report for information. Do we have a seconder for that?
Just a question of clarification. So we have a mover and a seconder. Now, don't we have to like vote on that?
He's making an amendment to the original motion.
But it's, okay.
Correct?
And you vote on the amendment first.
Correct?
Yeah.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, so Hugh, if there's a seconder, there would be an amendment to the motion, which you would vote on first, and then we would go back to the original motion.
Yes. Andrew?
Sorry, that brings up a question. Thank you, Marigitz.
I'm looking for a seconder first to the amendment.
Okay, then we can discuss the amendment after. That's fine. I'll second it.
Okay. All right, now discussion?
No, it says in the first paragraph of the recommendation, received for information. So I'm not really sure what the effect the deputy mayor is looking for by receiving it for information. We still have to vote on, as we have to still vote on the entire recommendation after, if I'm correct.
It would be, we would receive it, but it wouldn't go forward. Because you'd be just.
Don't we have to give a
receiving
recommendation to county though, regardless?
No, county would just get that we've not,
It's like do
we
nothing,
haven't denied it
basically.
and we haven't passed it.
Okay.
We just got it for information.
We didn't read
I
that
see.
part. Okay, all right. Okay, Andrew?
Just to be clear, so procedurally, we would have to defeat this to just have a neutral stance. Right? So I think we need, okay, anyway.
Right. Okay, any more comments?
Can you clarify that? If you're saying we need to defeat this to have a neutral stance, if I vote against the motion here, does that mean the original motion can't move forward because that's part of it? What Hugh's proposing has already been moved as part of the recommendation.
As an amendment.
But now you're asking to remove items 2 and 3. Is that the basis of this?
Yeah, that it doesn't, that it, we're not moving it forward, but we're also not denying it. We're just receiving it for information.
So that's
When
parts
it
2
comes
and,
to county, the only thing that county will get is that we didn't deny it, but we didn't support it either.
right, so if we, my question is, if this motion is defeated, does that mean we can't receive it for information anymore? Number 1 on the motion here is gone, and we're then voting on number 2 and 3, which is the approve in principle and the recommended approval. The first part of that, we can't vote on again because we would have defeated it already. That's what I'm curious about. Sorry, this has gotten a little bit.
And outside of the motions, because I think these are official plan applications, so it's a county approval. So if the intent is to say to the county, we're not in support, then, and I'm not telling you what to do, but if that's the intent, then you need to defeat the recommendation. That's the message that would get to the county. If we just receive it for information, county doesn't necessarily know what that means, other than we've received the report. The official plan application still goes to county. They are the approval authority. They would say, what was the recommendation that came from Perth East? And the planner would say they received the report for information.
Yeah, okay. Okay, clear as mud?
So currently there's a motion on the floor to amend the original motion, which would be to just receive for information. So as CAO Gibbons has said, if that's the intent that you're looking for procedurally, you may want to consider rescinding your motion of the amendment and then go back to the original motion and then make a new motion after that's been dealt with.
I'll rescind it, and then we'll vote yes or no on the first one.
Okay, so the amendment has been rescinded. Okay, so we're back to the original motion. Okay, any more comments or questions? Bob?
So regardless of what anyone's opinion is around the table at council or in the public meeting was held in the spring, and that was the opportunity for everyone to make comments, and you did. I realize you want comments immediately, but hopefully they've been addressed throughout the process of many studies and reports. Having said all that, I don't think the county really cares a whole lot what Perth East says. They're up to their own devices, right? And on top of that, the province is more than willing to accept any and all development. So I have a hard time believing that this wouldn't go ahead at some point in time, whether it's 5 or 10 years from now, because the province is just going to rubber stamp this without even giving it a second thought. And we all know that sitting around the table, because I've never seen so many pages in a report before. And on top of that, the planning department is recommending its approval. So in the past, you know, if we would have denied the application and went against the Perth County Planning Department, we would have had to get our own planning advice from a third party to then go up against the Ontario Municipal Board. That doesn't exist anymore. It's just the province looking at things and saying, proceed as applied for, right? So I hope that the public doesn't get too excited if this gets voted down, because it is going to go ahead at some point in time, guaranteed.
Okay, any more comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Defeated. Bob?
Could I ask for a recorded vote?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Broadhagen?
Nay?
Councillor McAlpine?
Nay.
Councillor Matheson?
Nay.
Councillor McMillan?
Yay.
Councillor Smith?
Yay.
Deputy Mayor McDermott?
Nay.
And Mayor Agates?
Yay.
So 3 yay and 4 nay. The motion is defeated.
Okay. Does anyone want to make another motion? Jeremy?
I'll move deferral till we can get some clarity on, can I still do that?
I
If we,
don't think so. I don't think so. You should have did that before we voted on the actual motion.
Okay, well, I mean,
Procedurally, I'm pretty sure we can't defer it now because we voted.
okay.
Unless you have a new, something else? No? Okay, then we're going, Andrew?
I guess the appropriate wording, Mayor, I guess would be to, in the second paragraph, and that council deny in principle the zoning amendment would be the motion that should go forward, and affecting lands be denied. So paragraph 2 and 3, approved, change to denied. Correct?
Wow, you're really putting us to a test tonight, Mike.
So the motion was on the floor as read and was defeated as read. Am I right? That's, and that's what you're just confirming, Councilor McAlpine?
Well, so does that imply that the county's message is going to be that there's no support?
That's correct.
Okay, that's fine then. That's
what
fine.
we'll go to the county.
There was asked if there was another motion somebody wanted to do, so that's what I thought I was being prompted to do, so.
That's what will be the message that goes to the county.
Thank you.
Perth East is not in favor.
Perfect.
Okay? Okay, then we're going to move on in our agenda. So the next item is under the CAO, and that's the cost apportioning agreement with the Upper Thames River Conservation. So Mike, the floor is yours.
Clear in the room again. So yeah, this report is a follow-up as it relates to, and we have the GM from Upper Thames River Conservation Authority here as well if there are further questions as it relates to the cost apportionment agreement. The agreement deals with the Category 3 services, and yeah, I've attached the agreement for council's consideration, and certainly if there are specific questions related to the agreement, Tracy, I'm sure would help me out with that, but this is follow-up on the MOUs as it relates that we have to enter, or the conservation authorities are looking for all the municipalities to enter into as it relates to Category 2 and Category 3. We have a specific Category 2 agreement with Upper Thames as it relates to the source water protection, which we've already previously addressed. So yeah, if there are any questions, either myself or Tracy could try to respond.
Okay, questions of the report? Welcome, Tracy. Maybe we can just give us a quick rundown of what Category 3 items we are including, just so everybody knows. And maybe there are in the report too, but.
Thank you, Mayor Eggets. I can certainly run through the main 3 areas. You would have seen, as you said, agreement similar to this from the Maitland Valley and the Grand River Conservation Authorities. But with our programs and services, we're really focusing in on our stewardship and restoration projects, our sub-watershed planning and monitoring, and our community outreach and education. And maybe just some examples of projects that we've done over the past 5 years in the way of stewardship and restoration. We had about 26 tree planting projects, which resulted in over 15,000 trees being planted, 3 cover crop projects to try to have cover crops on the landscapes in those rural areas over the winter months to keep phosphorus on the land, and wetland creation projects. So in total project cost, to give you an idea, it was about $68,000, and we were able to get direct funding back to landowners in the neighborhood of about $50,000. So in addition to these types of projects, we're able to provide that technical expertise to landowners who want to plant trees, and where funding is available through the Perth County Stewardship Program as well. And as well, deliver education and outreach programs in our schools in the local community. And so again, with your agenda package, you would have seen the guide. We talk about the Perth Children's Water Festival, community education staff going into classrooms for students at Shakespeare and Northeast and Central Perth schools, and then also working with the Stratford Perth Museum to deliver the Together on This Land public program. As well, we do a schoolyard outdoor education program to kindergarten and grade 1-2 students at Central Perth Public Schools. So those are a lot of examples of the things that we're doing through these Category 3 programs and services, as well as continuing to monitor our watershed conditions and through the sub-watersheds. That information, as we report on every 5 years through our report cards, will also be used by the County of Perth Stewardship Program to evaluate that implementation over time and its effectiveness. So through that, we're leveraging the municipal contributions in these Category 3 programs and services, where we're asking Perth East for $8,622 annually for the 2024 budget year, and leveraging all that contribution to provide those programs and services that I just mentioned. So if there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? If not, then we have a motion that the Council of Township of Perth East receive the report entitled Cost Apportioning Agreement with Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, CAO-2023-16, dated December 19, 2023, prepared by the Chief Administrative Officer for information. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Bob, second by Jerry. All in favor? Carried. Okay, thank you.
Just if I might, from a process standpoint, the intent will be to come back to council, future council meeting with a bylaw to authorize entering the mayor and clerk to enter into the agreement, just for clarity. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to move to the engineering department appointment of the Bond Municipal Drain. And Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So yeah, at the November 7th, 2023 regular meeting of council, council saw a section 78 request for the Bond municipal drain. It was for the enclosure or the enclosement of the upper portion of the drain. So from that, we circulated it to the Conservation Authority. In this case, it was Maitland Valley. They currently have no issues with the proposal, but they would like to be involved in the process. So we are just looking to appoint Dietrich Engineering Limited under Section 78. If there's any questions, I can answer them.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Questions of the report? No? Okay, so we have a motion that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report entitled Engineer Appointment, Bond Municipal Drain, DDC-2023-47, dated December 19, 2023, prepared by the Development and Drainage Coordinator for information, and then further that Council appoint Dietrich Engineering Limited to prepare an engineer's report under Section 78 of the Drainage Act for the Bond Municipal Drain, Lot 31, Concession 15, Ellis Ward, Township of Perth East. Moved by Amanda, second by Andrew. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Eric. Okay, we're going to move to land rental request. Ashley.
Okay, thanks, Mayor Eggetts. This is results from a RFP that we had for land that we own just west of the Public Works shop. There was one bid that was received. The person currently has rented the land for the last several years. We're looking to just move forward with that recommendation again. Can answer any questions if there's any.
Okay, questions? No, we have a motion that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report entitled Land Rental Request for Proposal Results East Part Lot 5, part of Concession 3, Mornington Ward, Milverton Lagoon Farm Property, CLE-2023-13, dated December 19, 2023, prepared by the Municipal Clerk for information, and further that the bid from Stilett Farms Limited be accepted, and further that Council give 3 readings to Bylaw 67-2023, authorize the signing of a 5-year agriculture lease agreement with Stilett Farms, Inc. Moved by Amanda, second by Jeremy. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, and the next is our procedural bylaw revision. Amanda, or Ashley?
Okay, thanks, Mayor Eggetts. So council is familiar with the proposed changes. We've had 2 meetings regarding the changes, or gatherings, I should say. So just quick high level, so staff and others are aware, and just a summary of what the changes were, the bigger changes. So on page 2, definitions, there was a definition added for electronic signature. Under section 2.44, workshop definition, county council representative will now be, the election will be held by a secret ballot rather than a show of hands. Through the inaugural meeting, the service of invocation performed by clergy has been removed from the agenda. The regular meetings will all begin at 7 p.m. Rather than staggering 7 and 7:30. The closed session, reporting out of closed session, the wording has been changed. So moving forward, we'll be providing as much discussion as we can out of closed session without jeopardizing what's listed and restricted in the Municipal Act, and having any direction that is needed to be provided from council in an open session brought out in the open session, so the open portion of the meeting. Electronic meetings, the mayor or chair is no longer required to be present in person at the meeting. Workshops have been added. Council members will receive the agenda by 4:30 p.m. on Thursdays, and the general public will receive it Fridays. Under inclement weather, some under section 7.8 now. Sorry, I wasn't referencing the sections as I was going along there. So if there is inclement weather, first staff can look at holding the meeting electronically, and if that can't be held, then we would proceed as listed in the procedural bylaw. Quorum, if it's not present within 15 minutes now, then we would move the meeting date rather than 30 minutes. The Majesty the King is referenced it rather than Her Majesty the Queen. The role of head of council has changed on page 14 now, section 10. And then under the agendas, so under consent agenda moving forward, so the proposal is for this to come into effect January 1st, 2024. Under consent agenda, we would only receive originating motions or resolutions of support. The new business section has been reworded to other business, and there's a clause reference there for the Perth East transparency and accountability policy. And then closed session is moved to the end of the agenda, so after announcements. There's a section added in for public records. That's a disclaimer there. Then the public presentations, other presentations, delegations section has been revised. So moving forward, public presentations would be received in accordance with the deadline for submissions of council meetings. Other presentations would be by a staff or invited third-party member to speak to a specific item on the agenda. And then delegations would be able to be received up until 11 on the day of the meeting in regards to a matter that's on the agenda that's been published. The petition section is the same. Reports for department heads, the cutoff is now Tuesdays at 12 p.m. rather than Wednesdays. Notice of motion, clarification, rewording there. And then the adjournment, so curfews at 10 p.m. rather than 10:30 if meetings were beginning at 7:30. Reconsiderations has been revised, and it's proposed to move forward with a 12-month timeframe. With that, rather than in discussions, it was a term of council. So looking at other procedural bylaws and different scenarios of what someone may reconsider, you do have to have new information to bring forward a reconsideration. So that 12-month was a reasonable timeframe. And that is all of them very quickly. If there's any questions or comments from the last working group session that we had, timer you would have seen tonight was added to the screens. I think that was it. If anything was missed or if there's any other questions or comments, then I can answer those.
Okay, questions, Hugh?
Yeah, rereading this today, I had nothing else to do. 17.7, the public record, it says personal information and opinion communications are part of the public record unless the author of the communications requests the removal of their personal information. But if anybody comes here as a delegation or anything like that, they have to give their name. So would this be correspondence we would never see?
So not correspondence that you wouldn't see, correspondence that would be included in a package. So for example, the item tonight with the OPA amendments, there's correspondence in there from neighboring landowners so that their information is part of the public record in our agendas.
Yeah, but it says here, though, that it's part of the public record unless the author of the communications requests the removal of the personal information. So how can we receive something if it doesn't have a name attached to it?
So the name would still be there, but like address, phone number, if that information was in there. But yes, we do have to know who it is or the group or company. Yeah.
When you read that, it almost looked like everything would be gone, like their name and their addresses and stuff like that. I just wanted to make sure that there would still be a name attached to whatever came to us. Okay, thanks.
Okay, other questions? Bob?
Well, since Hugh brought that one up, the first sentence and it's the second point here, it says public or open meeting will for part, so it should say form part, right? Only caught that because you brought it up now, Hugh. My real question was about the definitions. We have a definition for delegations, but you have to further clarify public presentation, petitions, et cetera, et cetera. Or under delegations, just / presentations, petitions.
Yes, I will add that / in there for those other definitions, public presentations and other presentations. Mm-hmm.
Okay, anything else? No, okay, then we do have a motion that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report entitled Procedural Bylaw Revision CLE-2023-14 dated December 19, 2023, prepared by the Municipal Clerk for information, and further that 3 readings be given to Bylaw 68, 2023, being a bylaw to adopt a policy to govern the calling, place, and proceedings of council and committees of the Township of Perth East and repeal Bylaw 15-2017. Need a mover, and moved by Amanda, second by Andrew. All in favor? Carried. Okay, thank you. We're going to move to finance, the annual investment report. Paula?
Thank you, Mayor Agates. Before council tonight is the 2023 annual investment report, and just a quick summary. At the end of November 2023, there was $22.5 million invested, and of that, there was $7.34 million in principal protected notes. So that ensures that the principal is insured to be returned to the township. And our investments that we are currently invested in, the interest rates range from 1.4% to 5.75%. And you'll note that the more recent renewed investments are the higher percentages. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, any questions of the report? If not, we have a motion that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report titled Annual Investment Report 2023 FIN-2023-28, prepared by the Treasurer, dated December 19, 2023, for information. Moved by Jerry, second by Hugh. All in favor? Carried. And the next is the property tax adjustments. Paula?
Thank you. So the next report is the 2023 property tax adjustment write-off report. And the 2023 property write-offs totaled $398,502.32. And I just want council to note that MPAC has modified their process relating to the transfer of ownership of farms. So previously, any farm ownership changes automatically reverted to residential class. Now, MPAC is going to leave them in the farmland class, and if they no longer qualify, that'll come through as an adjustment from MPAC to move them to residential or whatnot. So hopefully that's going to eliminate some of these write-offs, and the write-offs won't be as high going forward. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
That's great news. Great news. I'll let Hugh and then Jerry.
I noticed there's a huge amount of farm forest exemptions. Is that because when they send you the forms for that, it's so late in the year that by the time you would find out about that, it's too late?
The farm forest exemptions, they've changed and they've included an extra acre per lot, I believe. They went from exempting 10 acres to maybe 12 to 15 per farm.
Oh, okay, so
So that
this
created
is
a
not
lot
the-
more exemptions.
Okay, so this is not the one where, I think it gets the Ministry of Natural Resources or something, send me something about, because I touched Gas Hill Swamp. There's part of my land that I can either not pay taxes on or whatever. It actually would have probably cost me more money to figure that out than it was worthwhile, so it usually hits the garbage. But would you tell me what SAN is?
It's
in
a supplement.
RTC or no, the transaction column. What's
It's a supplementary assessment notice.
Oh, okay.
So it's an
Okay.
adjustment that was made to the assessment, whether it be, it's usually an increase if it's a supplementary.
Okay. No, and the thing, that farm exemption thing, it looks like that's an awful lot of work for you. And when you start looking at the money, it probably costs us more to do that stuff than it's worth, but anyway.
Yes, it's a much appreciated adjustment on MPAC's side.
Jerry?
Yeah, just a comment. So that was part of a delegation I sat in on 2022 at AMO that Per South kind of spearheaded and sat with Minister Thompson, Minister of Ag. So that was great news to hear that got switched over because, you know, sometimes delegations don't help, but it was nice to see that this one did. So.
Good. Any other comments or questions? If not, we have a motion that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report entitled Property Tax Adjustment, FIN-2023-29, dated December 19, 2023, prepared by the Treasurer for information, and that Council approve the tax adjustments listed in this report totaling $398,502.32 to be written off in accordance with Section 39.1 and 40 of the Assessment Act, Section 357 and 358 of the Municipal Act S.O.2001, C25 as amended. Moved by Hugh, second by Jeremy. All in favor? Carried. Okay, thank you. We have no reports from Public Works. We have no report from Building, no report from Recreation, no report from Fire. We're going to go down to correspondence. We have a letter from Kathy Steckley from Mornington Ward resident in regard to fostering dogs.
Can I speak to this?
Sure, go ahead.
Kathy approached me a few months back about the ability to foster dogs in Perth East and how it's in contravention of our bylaw. Like during COVID, you either bought an air fryer, bought a dog, or had a baby. So there's.
You had a baby?
I did. No air fryer in my house, but so there's a lot of dogs now that are requiring rehoming. They're either being abandoned or end up in shelters, and there's not capacity in the shelter. So before the animal can be claimed by someone and taken home, they're often euthanized. Our bylaw now allows us to have 2 dogs that we own. Plus, we have an allowance for working dogs. We made an exemption a couple of years back for working dogs. So I had some brief discussions with CBO Wright about, you know, what our rules were around these things and if there is sort of a nice, easy fix. He thought there may be some work to do around an exemption similar to like a working dog that we could allow some people to rehome these dogs in the interim while they're finding a new home. So what I would like to do is, Kathy's done a significant amount of work on this already, which she's spoken with Jim in bylaws about it to make sure she wasn't doing something that she wasn't supposed to be, hence why this has come forward. So what I would like to do is make a motion that we have our CBO look into some options for fostering dogs.
Moved by Jeremy. Do we have a seconder? Amanda? And then the motion that we have is that the Council of the Township of Perth East receive the correspondence from Kathy Steckley, Mornington Ward resident, received December 13, 2023, regarding fostering dogs for information, and that council directs staff to prepare a follow-up report. Okay, any questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay, we're going to move on to council committee reports. So you have my mayor's meeting log where I was for the month of November. Is there any questions on any of that? Well, that's the Perth East portion. And you have the county portion too. Okay, if no questions, do we have any council reports from any of the committees anyone sits on? No? Okay, then we need a motion to accept the verbal reports. Moved by Hughes, second by Jeremy, all in favor? Carried. Okay, then we're down to bylaws. We have 4 bylaws read a first and second reading. So we have bylaw, nope, the first one's gone, right?
Yeah.
First one's gone? Yeah. That's why I was hesitating. So we have bylaw 67-203, a bylaw to authorize the signing of an agriculture land lease agreement with Stilette Farms Limited. Bylaw 68-2023, a bylaw to establish a policy to govern the calling, place, and proceedings of the council and committees of the Township of Perth East. And bylaw 2023-01, a bylaw for tile debentures, and that these bylaws be read a first, second time. We need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Amanda, second by Jeremy, all in favor? Carried. And then we have 4 bylaws to be read a third and final time. Bylaw 67-2023, a bylaw to authorize the signing of an agricultural land lease agreement with Stilette Farms Limited. Bylaw 68-2023, a bylaw to establish a policy to govern the calling, place, and proceedings, council and committees of the Township of Perth East. Bylaw 118-2023, a provisional bylaw to provide for a drainage works known as Road 130 Municipal Drain 2023, and bylaw 2023-01, a bylaw for tile debentures. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Hughes, second by Andrew. All in favor? Carried. So we do have a need for a closed session, so we are going to go down to any notice of motions. We have we had 2 delegations, so we have 2 motions for the delegations tonight, so that Council of the Township of Perth East received the presentation from, it was Matthew Livingstone, which is the president, I believe, of the Milverton and District Rod and Gun Club Bateman Development for information. Moved by Amanda, second by Jeremy, all in favor? Carried. And the second motion is that the Council of the Township of Perth East receive the presentation from Rita and Jim Sniker, Milverton residents, Bateman Developments for information. Moved by Jerry, second by Bob, all in favor? Carried. Okay, do we have any other new business? Any announcements? If not, thank you everyone for coming out. We're going to, I guess I need to read the motion for closed, don't we, before we? Yes.
Mike's gonna say who he needs in there,
Mike's gonna say what?
who you need enclosed.
The clerk and the CAO will attend close from a staff perspective. I guess this is new in the procedural bylaw.
Okay, so we're going to go into closed session, a personal matters about identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, HR matters. We need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Bob, second by Amanda, all in favor? Carried. Thanks, everyone else. Enjoy the rest. Okay, so Council of the Township of Perth East rise from closed session and reconvene to regular session at 10:53. Moved by Amanda, second by Bob, all in favor? Carried. A motion that Council of the Township of Perth East approve the closed session minutes of meeting held on October 17, 2023. Moved by Hugh, second by Jerry, all in favor? Carried. And our confirmatory bylaw, that bylaw 69 dash, no, wait a minute. This one first, okay, sorry. We're going to back up. That a closed meeting was held and only closed session items identified were discussed in closed session, and further that council approved the confidential direction to staff. Moved by Amanda, second by Hugh, all in favor? Carried. And now bylaw 69, 2023, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of Council Township of Perth East at its regular meeting held on December 19, 2023, be read a first, second, and third time. Moved by Amanda, second by Hugh, all in favor? Carried. And the last meeting of the night, or motion, meeting of council be adjourned at 10:54 p.m. Moved by Jerry and Amanda, all in favor? Carried. Thanks, everyone.